Welcome to the Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts. We are your international headquarters for resources and ideas and insight in relation to the 9 elements of holistic wellness. Join us as we interview local and international wellness experts and learn how you can implement and improve one element or dimension of wellness at a time. Our experts will share their practical tips on wellness in one of these core areas: emotional, intellectual, occupational, physical, environmental, financial, spiritual, social, or habitual. We created our family of podcasts as a resource for anyone who is looking to integrate the 9 elements of holistic wellness into their daily lives. Welcome to the show. Hi, everyone. I'm excited. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Jordan Wolfson. Jordan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us who you are and what you do?
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much for having me on your podcast. I am a painter, an oil painter, an artist, and a teacher. I teach oil painting to adults, and I live in Colorado. And along with teaching oil painting in a pretty straightforward way, like how do you get your skills and look at stuff and paint it so it looks like it, I'm also teaching painting as a form of an awareness practice, so that as I paint, my sense of myself kind of settles and expands in a way, something like that.
I love that. And I think one of the things I'm learning as I get older is when you find creative outlets, you learn about yourself in that process. So um, let's talk a little bit about your painting and how you became a painter. Let's start with the origin of Jordan.
Well, gosh, I started painting in high school. I was lucky. It was a public high school, but it was a very small school district outside of Los Angeles. And in 10th grade, I took an art class with Lois Rosenfeld, and there were oil paints, and Lois was teaching all of us how to use oil paint, and I fell in love with it. And so that's when it started, 10th grade.
I
But
love
I,
that.
I didn't think, I mean, I went to college, I was, a bio major, I was pre-med and all that. But I took an oil painting class or an art class every quarter for myself. Like, that's what I need to do for me. And I just fell in love and I just stayed there. So,
I love it. Now, this conversation could go a few different directions, but you had said you wanted to talk about the importance of painting and presence. And as I understand it, you provide training in that.
mm,
So, first of all, let's define presence. And
mhm.
then I want to talk about why it's important in painting.
Well, let me, um, if it's okay with you, I'd like to reverse that just in terms of trying to find our way into it. So, for art lovers, when we're in a museum or we're in a gallery, or right, we encounter a painting and we're really wowed by it. Like, wow, that is something. It hits us.
Yeah.
There's some presence to it. It's like, that is an amazing. I don't know how to put my finger on it. Uh, and it's hard to define, and it's in kind of this energy of in the thing. It just kind of or it happens for me when I'm out in nature. Like, I'm walking and it's just, you can feel there's a presence in the air. And I understand that as a clear sense of being, a sense of consciousness, that it's an energy, it's a vibration. And somehow this energy of awareness, of consciousness, gets embedded in the painting. So that when I'm looking at a Rembrandt self-portrait that's 400 years old, and he's looking back at me, and I'm hit by this thing, it's not just that, well, he really did a good job painting what he looks like. It isn't just that external thing. There's something about Rembrandt's life force that somehow gets into this colored mud and is still vibrating hundreds of years later. Like, as far as presence is concerned, there is no chronology. There is no, well, time has passed. It doesn't really. It's now. It's all now.
Love that. And I think that's, we have cameras now that can capture things in great detail, but without that presence, it's still just a picture of a thing.
Right. That's right. That's right. And so reproductions, and we live, I mean, as a painter, my social media go-to is Instagram. And I think if I was a musician, maybe YouTube, but for Instagram, we all look at all these little tiny images and, oh, that looks good, and that looks good, and that looks good. But you don't get the presence. You can't. There's no way. It's not only that it's tiny, it has no energy. It's a digital thing.
Excellent. Well, let's get to painting and presence. So, what is your process? How do you teach? Because I'm going to guess in this modern era, the invention of the smartphone is probably the antithesis to presence. I think it's fair to say, and I think any real art, whether it's somebody in a creative space or if you're looking at sports, the true masters are truly present.
Mhm.
How do you go about teaching people who probably have a smartphone with them and they've got bings and beeps and things going on?
Well, I have students that are both in studio, so they're in my studio space and in person, and then students that are, we work together through Zoom. We do an online class, and we go through exercises and we talk about, so that when a when a when a person is first learning how to draw and paint, I don't I don't I don't go right at presence. I, try to explain the nuts and bolts and how to look at things and how to measure and how to mix, and it's all skill development. But it turns out, and you can ask anyone who's learned how to paint, like, in order to develop those skills, you need to slow way down and you need to be in the moment and very present. And that by default will just start to become like a mindfulness practice. And you just start to pay attention more and be present, and presence in the work. As you keep working, you need to bring in all these other pieces, and the mind, that self-judgment or anxiety or insecurity. I mean, all that stuff comes up. So we start working with those things as well. And how do you use them in the work? And there's all kinds of pieces that come into play as we're developing a painting. And we go through them, and I try to recontextualize them so they're not just like external formal processes of composition, or what does that mean from the inside. Like, for instance, in order for a composition to be really successful, somehow I'm organizing all of the different elements of a painting, the lines and shapes and edges, and this is the rectangle. I got to make it all work together so that it in some way becomes some whole thing. Well, how do I sense that wholeness? Where is that experience of wholeness located? How do I develop an awareness of wholeness? And it's sort of this invisible feeling inside me. Like, what is that?
Hmm.
And so there's this larger engagement that I'm involved in as I'm making a painting. And gradually I try to open that up as we're actually making this object. What does this entail?
And one of my favorite things, I love reading about some of the great masters, and I'm going to talk about Michelangelo.
Mm.
I love how he approached sculpting, and it wasn't so much, chipping away at the things to reveal the statue. It was more, basically he removed everything that wasn't David to reveal David. And I think I love that mindfulness of it is, he knew what was inside the material and it was just up to him to reveal it.
Mhm. Yeah, pretty extraordinary sensibility. Years ago, how many years now? There was this exhibition of his drawings at the Met. Must have been at the Met, the Metropolitan Museum in New York City. And I had the good fortune to go and see these drawings, and they just blew my mind. It wasn't just his facility, which was staggering. It was the power, the energetic power of these drawings were like mind-boggling. They just had this pulse.
Well, and I find it fascinating, and I'm not encouraging anyone to go out and do this today, but if you look at Da Vinci, you look at Michelangelo, they dissected cadavers,
Oh, yes.
and it's a little chilling when you think about it.
Mhm.
But it wasn't enough for them to know how the cheek looked. They
Mhm.
needed to understand the underlying structure of it.
Oh yeah,
Um,
sure. Yeah, and we do have anatomy classes for painting and drawing, and there is classical training. It's not necessarily a normative education today, but a lot of places do teach that very classical way of working still. Yeah. But there does, in a way, what you're describing is that in order for the painting to work, there needs to be some inner experience of what's underneath what I'm painting,
yeah.
that I need to somehow get inside it. And that there's in order for me, so that the painting ends up being like an appearance, but in order for the painting to be alive, that appearance has to carry something from behind it. There's a wonderful essay by John Berger. He was a British art critic who wrote about a lot of things, but including painting. And he wrote an essay called A Professional Secret. And he talks about behind appearances, that the person drawing is receiving signals from behind the frontier of appearances. I mean, it's a beautiful essay. Anyway, if anyone out there wants to, it's in a book called Keeping a Rendezvous, a collection of essays. And that essay is A Professional Secret. It's great. Short.
I love it. Now, let's come back to presence because I feel like presence is not just a skill for the artist to pick up. I think we could all benefit. What are some of the things you do to help your people find their presence? Or,
Hmm.
I'm going to guess presence is the least natural state for humans today. I can't help but notice, just little things like at school drop off. I see all the parents on their cell phones and, they're distracted. So, how do you help people nurture and foster presence?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm right there with you in terms of, I mean, that's, in my morning foundations class, and it's in studio, and we are all so grateful when we get there, because it's like, in order for us to draw and paint, I mean, everything just has to slow down. We put away the phones, and so we can be there. And you use the word natural today, but of course, today our lives are anything but natural. And I think the truth is, and I think you understand what I mean when I say presence really is our natural state. And we're just so yanked around by, no one's fault. It's this larger system that we've all grown, that's just developed over these centuries. And here we are. And it's, it's madness.
Yeah.
And so when we draw and paint and we do slow down, there is this just arrival at presence. But also, as people are developing, and let's say, okay, I've done some skill development for a couple of years and I want to explore. And so I really encourage people to experiment with different ways of working and try out, who do you love to look at and what are they doing? Try that yourself. So as we experiment, we start to become familiar with what are the terms, what are the ways of working, what are the subject matter, what way of marking that most grabs me, that most fills me up, that I love to do. Where do I live when I'm painting? Because when I do that, then my life force gets into the work. I'm really showing up because I'm in it. And when I'm in it, there's presence. That's what happens. So that's the beginning of like understanding, if I'm really involved, if I'm really engaged, if I really honor where I'm at, even if I think, well, that's not what you're supposed to do, but it's what I do. Like, okay, right. And then there's this possibility of something real happening.
I love that. And I think presence is not in what we're supposed to do, but in being in what we're doing, I think is.
Yes. And honoring just who we are, showing up as we are, honoring ourselves that way and following it and seeing what happens.
I love that. Now, let's talk a little bit about what is it like to work with Jordan, and then we'll get into how somebody can work with you. So you mentioned you have in person and you also have, so I believe you have a studio in Colorado. Let's talk
Yes.
about working with you in person and then.
So I have a studio in North Boulder. Boulder's a lovely town. And my studio is in North Boulder, and I have classes generally on Wednesdays, Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, different subjects in the afternoon. Generally in the morning, I teach a foundations course. So we're looking at still life and painting what we're looking at. I may be starting an evening class with a figure, drawing from the figure. That would probably also be on Wednesdays. And I also teach a variety of courses online through Zoom. And so things like non-representational abstraction, how to play with paint, painting through modern masters. So we're looking at people like Cezanne or Giacometti, Matisse, Picasso, and what are they doing? And how can I do some exercises to help me play in that way? What am I? So I do those kinds of courses online. And then I also have an 8-month training online. We go through a whole series that has to do with presence to a large extent. So those are the
Love that. And by the way, I don't know if you've met them, but it seems to me I've met some of the wonderful people from Tourism Boulder. So I think
yes, I did. Yes, Fig, yes, and
yeah,
Emiliano, yes, wonderful.
yeah. So it's good to see people are bringing people in. I'm gonna guess that there's a lot of beautiful nature to be
Beautiful.
painting as well. So
Yes, there's a lot of landscape painting in the area. Yeah.
love it. And you're literally neighbors with my dear friend Janine. So
Yes. Well, that's how we met, right?
out for a walk in the mountains around Longmont, I'm
No,
guessing.
we were in Ace Hardware. at the post office and Ace Hardware in Longmont.
I love it. Love it. All right. Well, let's talk about so if people want to connect with you, where can they go to find more about Jordan and what you do? What are some of the best ways to connect with you?
So I have a website, jordanwolfson.com, JORDANWOLF as in Frank, SON.com. There's another artist out there, .org. We're very different. He doesn't paint, he does other kinds of things, but in any case, I'm .com. Or Instagram, you can also find me on Instagram, Jordan Wolfson. And you'll see their paintings. So that's the one, there's probably a bunch of us out there. So that's probably the easiest way to connect. And, you can send me an email through the website or info@jordanwolfson.com. That also works.
Perfect. Great. Well, Jordan, you're the expert at being you. Is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't asked you yet?
Oh gosh, it's been great. I've really appreciated having this time together and talking with you. Nothing comes to mind in particular. I've enjoyed myself. It's nice chatting with you, Jeff.
Awesome. Well, one thing I will bring up is that you are, in fact, a published author.
Mhm.
One of the things I do on my podcast is obviously I like authors a lot. They're my people. Where can people get a copy of your book, and what is your book about?
Well, you can get a copy of my book through the website, and there's a link there, or you can send me an email, but you can purchase it off the book and I'll send it out to you. It's called Painting in Consciousness, and it is about the relationship of painting and consciousness. What is consciousness in the most real sense, and how does that express itself as painting? What is painting really in those terms? What are we doing? It's a small book. It's not particularly long, and
Well, it sounds like a very interesting topic. And by the way, one of the things I find is when I'm present as a podcaster, I'm much more interested in the podcast. I have much better conversations. So I would encourage people, the whole theme of this podcast is wellness and things like that. I would encourage people to be more present. And, just as a fun, weird little exercise I'm going to share, we do a tech-free Sunday, and basically our family, we shut everything off, and the only tech we're allowed, we have a family movie night, and it's
beautiful.
amazing what that decompression does for the brain to just take a day off. I'm not saying give up everything, but take a day or a half a day and just get away from the bings and beeps and all those little reminders of other things we should be thinking about. So
Beautiful.
well, thank you for taking the time to hang out with me and to be on the show, Jordan.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciated it. I look forward to being in touch.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our show. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to either click the link below or scan the QR code to register and listen to other episodes of our podcast. Or if you think your business or you would be a great guest to be on our show, we're always looking for experts in one of the 9 elements of holistic wellness. We'd love to have you. You can either click the link below or you can scan the QR code and complete our speaker intake form. Thank you, and to your wellness.